Hello and welcome to Maki's Closet. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you a video on how to make this trendy gown with a side gathers. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So now here is my pattern paper and I'm going to mark out my basic measurement. First, I'm going to place my tape and mark my shoulder to bust line, which is 9 inches. And I'm going to go ahead to mark my shoulder to under bust, which is 12 inches. Shoulder to waistline, which is 17 inches. Then from there, I'm going to place and mark 7 inches to get my hip point. So the total length of my gown is 35 inches minus the side that has the gathers. So that side is actually longer, and after marking 35, I added 2 inches for folding allowance. So I went ahead to mark out all those lines, and I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2, go down by 1 inch, place my ruler and connect. So after doing that, I'm going to find my chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So I'm going to mark at that point, and I'm going to go ahead to draw a straight line. So after that, I'm going to mark what I have at the shoulder this way, which is 7 inches, and I'm going to connect from the upper part of my shoulder line down to the chest line. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to divide what I have at this point into 2. Dividing here into 2, I have 3.5 inches, and I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to place my French curve touching that point down to the ½ inch at the armhole and down to the upper part of my shoulder. So now I'm going to go ahead to outline this. Then I will label my pattern as chest line, bust line, under bust to waist, and I'm going to mark my hip and full gown length. So now I'm going to be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5. So I'm going to mark it all the way down to my hip line, and I'm going to mark it to the lower part of my dress, my pattern where my dress stops. Now I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to connect, and I'm going to draw a straight line. So I'm going to connect from my chest line down to my hip point, down to the lower part of my pattern till I get to the length of the gown. So after I'm done doing this, the next step I'm going to take right now is to go ahead to mark my dart, to extend this from my chest line by 1.5 inches, and I will make a straight line and connect it back. So I'll be marking 0.75 inches that on both sides. The reason why I'm doing this is because I'm not going to be padding this dress. I just don't want it to be too curvy. So I'll go ahead and outline that part. After I'm done outlining, the next thing I'm going to take right now is to come down by 1 inch from that 1.5 inch I went up by, and I'm going to come down this way. So we have a sweetheart neck that is not so deep on this part. So now this hat intake I took out from here, which is 1.5 inch, which is 0.75 at both sides. So now I'm going to extend that line to that point. So after I'm done, I'm going to place my French curve, and I'm going to reconnect my armhole. Now I'm going to take the same measurements of that I have, which is 0.75 at my waistline and under bust. I'm going to connect. So the reason why I'm marking this is because I don't want to pad my dress. So you can go ahead and use your normal dart intake if that is okay by you. So after I'm done drawing this out, I'm just going to go ahead to outline my pattern this way. So after I'm done outlining, the next step now is to extend it down to my hip point. So I'm going to place my ruler and extend this way, and then I'll repeat this process for the other side also. So I'm going to go ahead to outline the line that I have on that point, and I'm going to go ahead to take it down to the lower part of my dress, or to the length or full length of my dress. Now I'm going to come in by 2.5 inches at the shoulder part, and I'll stop where I have this at the lower part, or the line before my chest line, And now I'm going to be marking my bust circumference divided by 4, mark the dart intake, and mark my sewing allowance of 1 inch. Then whatever I have at the chest line, I'll take it down to my bust line. At the under bust, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and mark my sewing allowance. At the waistline, I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it, and I will mark my sewing allowance. So now I'll mark my hip circumference at this point, and I'll go ahead to mark my sewing allowance because there's no dart at that point. So whatever I have at my hip point, I'm going to extend it down. So go ahead and connect all your pattern and connect it down to your hip also and to the full length of your dress. And right now you're going to go ahead to outline this. After you're done outlining this, you're going to go ahead to cut out your pattern. So before I cut out my pattern, I'm going to actually draw out the waistline of this. So I'll come down by 3 inches from my hip point, and I'm going to make a straight line from that part, because if you notice, the curve started from that point, and I'll go in by 1.5 inches. So you can go ahead and go in by 2 inches. So I'll go ahead also place my French curve and connect. So to have that curvy effect at this point, I'm just going to use my pencil to curve it a little at this part down to the other side of my hip. Then I'm going to go ahead to outline. So this is my pattern already, and I'm just going to go ahead to cut out this pattern. So while cutting out this pattern, you're going to also cut out the waistline, but I'm going to actually do that later. So if you have any question concerning this tutorial, please leave your question at the comment section, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. So I'll take out like 0.25 inches from the yoke so that it's going to relax, or the sleeve of the dress. So this is what I have after I'm done cutting out. So we'll go over to the back. I have this old pattern and I'm going to make use of it. So I'll just go ahead and explain what I'm going to do. So I marked my zipper allowance. To mark my dart, I measured my bust to my shoulder to under bust plus 1 inch, and I went ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'm going to go ahead to draw a straight line at that point. So after I'm done doing that, I'll just go ahead to extend my line. So at the lower part now, I'm going to be marking 1/2 inch darts at both sides. So go ahead and place, and you're going to connect, and repeat the same process also for the back part of the other side of your pattern. Go ahead to outline it. So after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to rule out the chest line. That is where your yoke will be starting. So for this pattern, I went ahead to draw out the yoke, but for this tutorial we don't need that part, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off. So just go ahead and mark 0.25 inches at the lower part of your yoke, because you're going to be getting rid of that. So I'll go ahead and mark my body circumference divided, that is my bust circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance, mark my waist circumference divided by my under bust circumference divided by 4, sorry, mark the dart intake, and mark my sewing allowance. So after I'm done marking that, I will head over to my waist, mark my waist circumference divided by 4. After marking that, I'm going to mark the dart intake, and I'm going to replace it. So after I'm done outlining that, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to get rid of the bulginess at the zipper part. Go in and mark 1/2 inch and extend it. So I'm just going to mark it just to indicate. And next step is to go ahead and cut out my pattern, and after cutting it out, we'll go ahead to alter the yoke. So we're going to alter the yoke of the back. So I'll just go ahead and mark 2 inches, because what I have at front is also 2 inches, and I'll mark 2.5 inches. At the upper part, I'll go ahead and connect. So while I was connecting this, I decided to go out by 1/2 inch at the lower part of this yoke also. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that, but before I do that, also indicate where your yoke is going to start at the back of your dress. Is very important so that you don't place it, or where your sleeve is going to start at the back, before you place it at the wrong side of the dress. So just go ahead and notch, and I'll continue cutting out the sleeve. So this is the sleeve and this is the back part of my dress. So now this is my dress, and just like I said when we were cutting out, we're going to actually cut out the waistline, because if you notice in the picture at the thumbnail, there is a cut at the waistline of this dress, but there's some designs or style of this dress that you don't have to cut out the waistline, but for this particular one you have to go ahead and cut out the waistline. So now I'm going to go ahead to open it up, and I'm going to be cutting the waistline, and make sure that the waistline you're cutting is the actual waistline. So now this is the upper part, and this is what I have at the lower part, and you're going to cut out your pattern separately and you're going to be joining it. So for the back pattern, I'll just add zipper allowance to it, and that's all. And the back and the front is almost the same thing at the lower part. So now we are going to slash the side of this pattern actually to give it that gathers effect. So if you notice, this dress has a gathers effect or at the side. So you can decide to divide your pattern, but before you do that, label your pattern. C meaning the side center and S meaning side. So the C is the part facing the center, and while the side is the one at the hip part. So I divided my pattern into 3. You can divide into more as you want, and I'm going to go ahead to cut out those lines and go ahead to label it as 1 2 3, so that when you're placing it on your pattern, you're not going to misplace any. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. If you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please hit on the subscribe button. If you haven't yet subscribed, give this video a thumbs up, and see you in our next video where we'll be actually sewing this pattern. Thanks.